Kempton in Brighton is a camp, bohemian, and affluent seaside spot, and the ideal location for a seafood restaurant. Gordon travels by eco-friendly tuk-tuk to surprise the owner of Ruby Tates' oyster bar and restaurant, Allan Love. The ex-stage and screen actor opened his business a year ago, hoping to provide a fine dining experience to his customers. But it's no smash hit. Instead, he is losing around £1,500 a week. But despite the seat staying empty, Allan is convinced he's following a winning formula and takes on the role of sociable host with enthusiasm. He doesn't know what Gordon is going to be able to teach him.
You know what? He ain't God. He's Gordon Ramsay, a successful businessman.
Unfortunately, he's more interested in putting on a performance out front than overseeing the kitchen, and instead leaves that to his two chefs. While argumentative Frenchman Alex has trouble controlling his temper, Australian Jamie is less passionate in the kitchen, with a greater love for travel than for food.
I'll be honest with you, I'm just doing it for the moolah, man.
As for the quality of the food, Allan is convinced it's good, while his staff have slightly lower opinions of the dishes they produce.
It's not 5-star, it's not even 3-star, but at the end it's not shit.
While he's not due to arrive until the evening, Chef Ramsay decides to surprise the team at lunchtime and get some foodie friends to order for him so there's no special treatment. Gordon starts by sampling the 55-pound des fruits de mer, a cooked seafood platter that is traditionally served over ice, but is unfortunately still warm. The lobster is poorly prepared and greedy, and the oysters are no better. They are stale and rubbery, leaving Ramsay feeling like he's eaten the inside of a golf ball. The food is an expensive disappointment and ends up in the rubbish bin. While the diners wait for the next dish, they admire the unusual artwork on the walls, which Gordon thinks looks like vomit, with some unusual additions.
Is that legit? That is a pair of encrusted knickers?
It is, and it's part of the artwork as well.
Next up is a sea bass, which is farmed in Greece despite the restaurant being positioned right on the English coast. Owner Allan watches on nervously as Ramsay pulls it apart, and announces the chef who prepared it was obviously bored. The meal costs a staggering £175, which Gordon clearly doesn't feel was a fair price. To put that into perspective, this was when the pound was 2 to 1 to the dollar, so that would be $350. Nowadays, with inflation, that would probably be $450, $500. He introduces himself to the owner, and tells him the disgusting meal was interesting and different. Allan tells Ramsay that as it stands, the business won't stay open through the summer. He's just borrowed an additional £30,000, but that's the last funding available to him. While he initially tries to laugh about his difficult situation, he quickly becomes tearful, and Gordon apologizes for upsetting him. Moving outside, away from the watching customers, Allan tells Chef Ramsay that he's proud of what he's achieved, but every penny he's ever earned is tied up in the failing business. Gordon feels it's time to confront the chefs. As he tries to understand how the kitchen works, Gordon is surprised to discover that there is no head chef, and instead, Jamie and Alex work together to produce the menu. Jamie repeats to Gordon that he's just there for the money and doesn't want to be a hero, but Ramsay calls him out on his bad attitude. When he asks why they are using farmed fish instead of a fresh local alternative, Alex has an odd response.
Because it's hard to get fish in Brighton.
What?
Yeah. I know he's wrong.
Asking the chef if he'd ever heard of the fish market, Gordon tells him his attitude also stinks, and that he should head back to France if he's no longer interested in his food. Allan is back to smiling and laughing and tells Ramsay the customers love the food and never complain, much to Gordon's disbelief. But Allan reveals to Gordon that he hasn't actually tasted any of the dishes himself. After getting a fish bone stuck in his throat as a small child, he no longer eats seafood. Chef Ramsay is speechless. Heading out to the street, he asks locals for their opinion of Ruby Tates. Most haven't heard of it, and the name doesn't give them any clues about the cuisine served inside. Others have passed by, but haven't ventured in because the decor looks dated and pretentious. Back at the restaurant, Gordon watches the chefs at work to see what's going wrong in the kitchen. They serve up tough and flavorless lobster, which he realizes must be pre-cooked. He's right, it's prepared and blanched in advance for convenience, which causes it to lose its distinctive taste, and is a massive waste of money. One tray holds 200 pounds worth of pre-prepared lobster. In the drawer below, he finds mussels. Dead mussels. Alex tells Gordon they were delivered that morning and will only be used if they were really needed.
But you'll kill somebody. They're all open, they're dead. You can't serve them, Alex.
Yeah, I know that.
You're not...
Having finally got through to the chef about the potential danger to diners, Ramsay insists that the mussels are thrown away immediately. Out front, Allan once again tells Gordon that he rarely receives a complaint. Having seen terrible ingredients and careless food preparation, Ramsay accuses the owner of being a good actor. Who's kidding himself? Allan is furious that he's been called a liar, but Gordon won't back down. He is convinced that the owner is too scared of his chefs to confront them. To prove him wrong, Allan heads back to the kitchen, which is empty because Alex and Jamie have gone outside for a cigarette. Gordon tells Allan he's in complete denial, and he can't work with someone who won't accept what is clearly going on under his nose. Allan accepts he should have known what was going on, and that his staff aren't up to scratch. He wonders whether he should just close the doors. The next morning, Gordon heads over to Allan's house, which has been put up for sale to support the restaurant. Having borrowed over £140,000 in the past 6 months, Allan has nothing left, and everything is riding on the business working. Together, they go through the financials, which are bleak. On one day, they took just £3.25 after selling a single beer. As their mid-peak season, Gordon is determined to make the most of the increased footfall in the area and has a plan: traditional British fish and chips. Heading down to the harbor, the first step is to source fresh, sustainable fish from the local market, despite Chef Alex having told Gordon it wasn't possible.
I agree I was wrong.
Well, fuck me. A Frenchman admitting he's wrong.
They choose cheap and plentiful pollock, which was caught that morning. Back in the kitchen, Ramsay reminds the young chefs that Allan's house is on the line, and they should head home if they're not prepared to properly support him. He even offers to buy Alex a plane ticket back to France. They both commit to the change and watch Gordon prepare the perfect plate of fish and chips. Even fish-phobic Allan tries it and loves it. Ramsay hopes that low prices and high-volume sales will be enough to reverse Ruby Tate's fortunes, and he's invited some locals to fill the dining room. Customers are keen to try the fish and chips, despite many having never tried pollock before. The chef served 20 portions in just 15 minutes. The food is going down well with customers, and so is Chef Ramsay's famous charm.
I thought you were great in the Queen, by the way. I beg your pardon.
Alex and Jamie are both re-energized, and the restaurant has taken £2,000 instead of the usual £200 on a Tuesday night. Allan is delighted and keen to continue this new trend. But when it comes to changing the look of the restaurant, which the locals openly criticized the previous night, Allan isn't keen. He decides it's time to stand up to his visitor over the ghastly decor and artwork. Allan explains to Gordon that he bought the first painting in the set, and planned the restaurant's entire color scheme around it. Gordon can't understand what the knickers add to the atmosphere, but Allan takes the criticism personally and feels forced to defend the artist and his own taste. An insulted Allan gets increasingly angry, and Gordon once again accuses him of acting, which enrages him further. He shouts at Ramsay that he won't be called a liar and threatens to kick him out. Calling him a baby, Gordon walks out the door. Once tempers have cooled, Gordon invites Allan to meet him at another fish restaurant so they can check out the competition. Going back to the controversial subject of the color scheme, Allan tells Ramsay that the competitor's decor is cold. Gordon argues that it's cool and contemporary, and helps the owner take £20,000 a week. Fair point. Allan finally agrees it's time to modernize the restaurant. Next, it's time to tackle the staff. Gordon calls a meeting, on a boat in a storm. When they've made it safely into the harbor, Ramsay asks everyone to write down a good point and a bad point about their boss. The comments have a running theme. Allan doesn't behave as a leader or have their respect. Gordon wants the staff to walk the plank and persuade the owner to save them. Despite pleading their case, he makes the chefs jump into the sea below. At the restaurant, Ramsay decides the team needs leadership from a head chef, and tells the two young chefs they each need to prove they are capable of taking on the job. Jamie starts off by making mistakes with orders, and Alex starts burning dishes and dropping food. But Jamie regains his cool and keeps service on track, making him an obvious choice for the leadership role. At the local fairground, Ramsay tells Alex he's not head chef material, and convinces Jamie to forget traveling and commit to the kitchen. And he tells Allan to concentrate on playing host front of house. Having finally got the owner's agreement, Gordon has updated the dining room decor. When Allan arrives, Ramsay welcomes him into the clean, modern space, which Allan describes as clinical and austere. Gordon reminds him he's there to build a business. And along with changing the color scheme, he wants to change the name to Love's Fish Restaurant. Allan tells Gordon he's stripped him of everything else, so he may as well go along with the name change, though he doesn't look too delighted. Finally, it's time to reveal the new menu. A range of fresh fish is listed on a board, and each can be steamed, poached, grilled, or fried. Gordon has invited some local celebrities to sample the new dishes, putting the kitchen under further pressure. There's confusion about the number of dishes that have been sent, but Jamie gets them back on track and the food reaches the VIP table. It goes down well, and Allan has made £2,500 in one evening. Though he still isn't happy with the name or decor, the owner admits that Gordon's got it right. Chef Ramsay just hopes Allan sticks with the changes when he's gone. 2 months later, he's back to check on whether the locals now love Loves. He's heard they are offering a takeaway service, so putting on a thick Scottish accent, his alter ego, Jimmy, calls in to place an order undercover. He enters the kitchen, and Jimmy asks head chef Jamie where his order is. When he looks for Alex, Gordon is told he left 2 days after filming finished. Jamie tells Ramsay he wasn't prepared to change his attitude, so Allan agreed to fire him. Alex, who has returned to France, felt he couldn't accept the lower-paid chef's position. The restaurant has been full since Gordon's visit, and Allan is visibly more relaxed. He recently accepted an offer to buy his house, but appears more upbeat about the change as turnover has tripled, with the restaurant taking £14,000 a week. On the beach, it's time to enjoy their Loves fish and chips, with actor Allan sitting in a personalized director's chair. Gordon is pleased that the food is still delicious, and the owner is now actively running his business, instead of the business running him. Loves is now a popular Brighton eatery, and Ramsay is pleased this dramatic tale appears to have a happy ending. The Ruby Tates episode of Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares was filmed in July 2007 and aired 3 months later. It was rated 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb, making it one of the more popular episodes in the series. The unique mix of characters was a big contributor to the episode's success, with viewers feeling the cast's big and conflicting personalities would make a great comedy show. Hot-headed Frenchman Alex was criticized for his bad attitude and laziness. His initial refusal to remove dead mussels from the menu, while claiming he knew fish, was particularly confusing. Eagle-eyed fans also spotted that even during the final service, he cleaned up his dropped fish by sweeping it under the stove. And while Aussie Jamie's attitude was just as bad at the beginning, he was praised for his honesty about the standard of the food and his motivations. Despite a pretty negative start, he managed to win the viewers over as the episode went on. In fact, by the end of the show, many were crediting him completely with the restaurant's turnaround, as he took ownership of the kitchen and embraced the profitable fish and chip concept. Behind-the-scenes shots show that Gordon really made Jamie work for his new position, but the star of the show was undoubtedly owner Allan, who couldn't quite leave his movie star days behind him. It's safe to say that Allan didn't find the experience easy. He has described his time with Chef Ramsay online as a nightmare, and in a local newspaper as a traumatic week. Gordon shared his initial opinions about the restaurant very gently, despite his reputation for sometimes painful honesty and brutal criticism. That could be because he sensed that Allan's performing was actually a form of self-protection, which became obvious when his laughter literally turned to tears as he shared the reality of his position. In the end, it was Gordon's kindness and empathy that led to his breakdown, when usually it's shouting, swearing, and confrontation that gets owners to that point. But Allan continued to defend the restaurant, the staff, and the food, because they didn't receive complaints. As regular viewers were quick to point out, a lack of negative feedback doesn't mean there are no problems. Allan's complete denial led to him being compared to a famous meme. He really tried to tell himself that everything was fine. The inevitable argument did happen, triggered by Allan's unusual taste in artwork, and the bold and bright color scheme that the paintings inspired. When Gordon finally ended up toe-to-toe with the stubborn and furious owner, Allan reminded viewers that Ramsay is just a successful businessman. Fans loved the irony that Allan was unable to just become the same thing. The chef was praised for his ability to remain patient up to that point. But Gordon got his way in the end. He was seen repeatedly checking up on the renovation after his win, to make sure those knickers were really gone. The transformation of the restaurant and the owner himself were both huge successes, with the improved income leaving Allan looking visibly younger by the end of the episode. His smile certainly seemed more genuine in the final scenes on the beach. After Gordon's visit, Allan embraced his rekindled fame and launched his own podcast. In December 2007, he reassured listeners that he wasn't homeless, though his house was still for sale. And he'd had a call from Gordon, who was planning to visit, and he wouldn't be alone.
His mum loved the show so much that she wants to come down here and eat.
It seemed that all was still going well, and Allan looked happy and healthy. Sadly, his next podcast, almost a year later, had a very different tone. Having received a huge tax bill, Allan shared that the economic climate meant income was down 50%, and he had been forced to let employees go. The business was now in dire straits, and restaurants like his needed help from the government.
Gordon Ramsay, I wish you were here now, because you could make a difference. We need someone like you at the helm.
But it seems that help didn't come because 2 months later, in January 2009, Love's Fish restaurant closed for good. It remained open for just 18 months after Ramsay's intervention. A message on the restaurant's website thanked customers for their support and made it clear that there were no hard feelings towards Gordon. In a newspaper article, Allan said Gordon didn't care about the restaurant's success, and just wanted to improve his own image. In a later piece, he went on to say he was told to sell expensive food cheaply to draw in customers, which wasn't magic, and Chef Ramsay was not a magician. Though it's fair to say that Gordon's done a pretty good job of making money from his own fish and chip restaurants. His fast casual British-style street food can now be found in 5 US locations. Following Love's closure, the building was taken over by Pavel Indian Restaurant and Takeaway, which gets pretty good reviews and a 4.4 out of 5 Yelp rating. It's still there today. The interior is a mix of colors and patterns, a million miles from the clean and contemporary decor that Gordon fought so hard for. After the episode aired, viewers were keen to find out what happened to Aussie chef Jamie after his amazing turnaround in the kitchen. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find an update on either Jamie or Alex, but we do have an update on owner Allan. When the restaurant was sold, unemployed Allan was forced to start claiming benefits. He lost everything, including the home he'd tried so hard to keep. A few years after his restaurant dreams came to an end, the ex-actor turned back to his previous love, movies. He's one of the few Nightmares owners to have their own IMDb listing. During his time on the show, Allan spoke about a successful career which began on the stage and led to the screen. In the 1970s and 80s, he starred in a series of musicals, including Godspell, Cats, and Rock Nativity. He also appeared in the musical Tommy, which was written by Pete Townsend and The Who. He moved on to acting in films during the 1980s and early 1990s, including a role in the cult classic The Apple, which gets pretty poor reviews but has a loyal following. Maybe that's where the infamous knickers came from. Allan took some time out before starting his own media company in 2014, which was then dissolved in 2016. Since 2019, he has been focused on writing, and has completed a number of screenplays, musicals, and even a children's book. After getting married in 2019, Allan and his wife moved to Cebu City, where the family now lives. Allan's wife ran a popular bar and grill there, and it appeared that Allan had plans to go back to his restaurant roots, adding Italian pizza and pasta to the menu. That didn't seem to take off, though he stayed food-focused and managed to source pork sausages for the British breakfast served at the bar instead. It certainly seemed to be a popular spot for both locals and tourists visiting the area, and one of the few online reviews mentioned the host and hostess as being warm and welcoming to customers. Another mentions that the food isn't great. We're sure Allan would disagree. But then the pandemic hit, and the bar was forced to close its doors, though they hope to reopen as soon as possible. Sadly, that didn't happen, and the bar remained closed, leaving Allan and his family in a difficult situation. It remains closed today. And that's not the only bad luck they have experienced. After suffering a nasty accident, Allan was left with 3 broken bones, a 2-hour operation, and a large medical bill. The family seems to be suffering financial difficulties and are reliant on the 77-year-old's UK pension, which has not been straightforward to collect in the Philippines. Allan, his wife, and children are sleeping on the floor of one room and are struggling to afford food, with meat limited to 3 meals a week. More recently, sanitation issues affected their weekly budget, leaving them worrying they did not have enough rice for the week. Despite these difficulties, Allan's online presence generally remains upbeat. He shares many proud photos of his young family and continues to recall easier and happier times back home in the UK on the stage, screen, and yes, even kitchen nightmares. We wish him all the best for the future.